Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, coming to you bright and early again. I was considering maybe sleeping in today. I actually already recorded a video for this morning where I went over all the past FanFest dates and compared them against the actual release dates of expansions while also factoring in point 0.5 patches in each expansion, and it came up with a less doomy prediction. I'm still going to put that video out, but Yoshi-P decided to post this last night after I went to bed regarding mod usage and culture in Final Fantasy XIV. I mean, we probably should have expected some sort of formal announcement or some sort of addressing of what's going on, because it's kind of unavoidable at this point. People have been tagging, it's wild to me that they're doing this, people have been tagging the official Twitters and social platforms, and they got review bombed on Steam very briefly before their anti-review bombing thing kicked in. So people are, despite what we've always been told of don't ask, don't tell Fight Club rules, everyone's going to Square and being like, hey, don't do that. Hey, here are the mods we're using. Why are you going after a mod? It's like, bro, it was always Fight Club rules, and when Fight Club gets broken, this is what happens. But there's been a lot of conjecture. I had a video out about the whole plugin situation. I took it down because there were still some inaccuracies in what I was saying, so I just figured why leave it up and then make a correction later when I could just take it down and then make the correction in full with a new video. But now we don't really need any conjecture at all, because I'd assume this post is going to give us some good insight into why the decision was made in the first place and Yoshi-P's official stance on mod usage and culture. Now, there is a request on the screen. We request the cooperation of media outlets and those intending to repost this comment elsewhere. Please do not summarize or provide only excerpts. We respectfully ask that you link readers to this comment. I will do that. There will be a link to this in the description of the video. I'm sure people would have wanted the source so they could, also reference it anyway. And I will be doing my best to read it verbatim. I'm sure I always skip a word or two here or there, but I'll be doing my best to read it verbatim so I can do my proper assessment of what Yoshi-P says here. So, hello everyone, producer and director Naoki Yoshida here. I'd like to address the recent feedback and discussion among the community regarding in-game mods. This post is not meant to target any one mod specifically, but I'd like to touch on the general subject of mods, their use, and the culture surrounding them. I thank you in advance for your understanding. Firstly, while I am in charge of Final Fantasy XIV, I am also a PC gamer and have been for many years. I've spoken, about this multiple times in the past, but my own personal stance regarding mods is that I do tolerate them, has not changed. In the past 20 or so years, verbatim, I've seen numerous positive examples of games with fan-made mods that expand upon existing gameplay. However, these mods are generally created with a vital premise in mind. They are for personal use only, and the individual player is responsible for the mods they use. Furthermore, the mods must not impact core games, its services, or the intended game design in a negative manner. I personally feel that these rules should be followed by all mod creators and users. It's a little strange because I feel like with a lot of PC mods, I've seen plenty that fall into the category of expand upon existing gameplay. And again, a lot of positive examples. My girlfriend and I have been playing a Stardew mod, which gives us just tons more things to do on top of the base game. So like, all it's done is, as you say, expand upon existing gameplay. But there's also tons that completely overwrite the intended game design in order to make it better. So does that count as expanding upon existing gameplay? You know what I mean? I feel like there's a bit of a gray line there, and that's kind of always been where mods have been in Final Fantasy XIV, is existing in this kind of gray space of, is it allowed, is it not? And it's because Yoshi-P said this before, he tolerates them. He's just be quiet about using it, and don't do anything too crazy. Don't post pictures with our trademark, don't do anything too crazy. I mean, most of the times we've seen action, it's when things get talked about in game or someone makes a post on the lodestone, like inappropriate post on the lodestone with mods. That's most of the time we see it, or in a world race. We've seen that plenty of times in the last few years. So yeah, we get. Personally feel these rules should be followed by all mod creators and users. That being said, if players continue to uphold the above premise of mods enhancing one's personal enjoyment of the game and acknowledge that they are taking responsibility for what they download, I personally see no reason to track down or investigate gamers for general use of mods. So that should be, in theory, a very, what's the word? That should make people feel okay about a lot of the visual mods that they're using for the time being, largely because if you're adhering to those and you're just kind of moderating yourself and changing yourself, He's not going to be like, okay, we need to hunt every one of these guys down. Mod creators should generally feel better about that statement, although I guess we need to actually read the rest of it. And people who are installing visual mods probably feel a little bit better about that. But we've still got a lot of posts left. Of course, from my position leading Final Fantasy XIV, I still feel it is vital for players to follow our user agreement and other rules. Yeah, the user agreement doesn't allow it at all, so bit of a tough spot. Additionally, I'd like to stress the importance that players follow two rules: that their style of gameplay does not infringe upon others, and that they do not negatively impact the core game, its services, or intended game design as mentioned above. It is my sincerest hope that everyone can continue playing Final Fantasy XIV as well as other PC games in ways that are enjoyable to them. Okay, off to a decent start here with this post. Below, I'd like to elaborate on what infringing upon others and negatively impacting game design entail. Good, because they definitely need examples. You cannot do broad statements. People will not take broad statements in this. These are merely examples, so I don't mind if you skip over them. Don't skip over them. Please keep in mind that these theoretical examples do not single out any particular mod. The fact that he has to say that tells me it's going to feel like it's really... I can't help but feel like it's very much going to do that. Furthermore, this is not a criticism of those who create or use mods. The following is meant to deepen everyone's understanding of our stance on the matter. Okay. Altering item and character appearances. Yep. I have a feeling it's going to feel like there is a particular mod that is being mentioned here, or that is being used as the example here. Let's find out. In Final Fantasy XIV, we have several extremely high-end duties that challenge players to their limit, known as ultimate raids. Okay, this actually came up in discussion, that there are mods that people use to just mod a weapon, an ultimate weapon, onto themselves. This came up very frequently in the recent discussions of everything. So I have a feeling that's where we're going right here. To defeat these enemies within the raids, players must dedicate a significant amount of time and effort. As their reward for clearing, they earn the title of Legend, as well as job-specific weapons with specialized visual effects. Let's say player A loves ultimate raids. It's motivated to challenge them at every opportunity. After they clear, they proudly equip their new title and weapon as proof of their party's diligent effort to defeat them. Meanwhile, we have player B, who makes use of a specific mod. This mod allows them to bypass the conditions for obtaining in-game items, making it possible for them to equip any item in the game, including items that must be purchased with real money. I had a feeling that was going to come up too. Player B is busy with work, and although they have the motivation, their circumstances prevent them from progressing through any of the ultimate raids. They decide instead to install a mod so that they can at least see what it looks like to have their own character equipped with one of the ultimate raid weapons. I'd say that's giving a lot of people credit. I feel like when people have the motivation to do ultimate, I've seen people do, 2-3 nights a week doing 2-3 hours and get through ultimate raids. I have a feeling that's not the real target audience of those particular mods, but, it's just for the example. He's not saying it's all players, it's just an example. Player B uses said mod to equip a set of items which only displays on their client's screen. To other players, Player B's model is only wearing default gear, but on Player B's monitor, I can see where this is going. They're equipped with a dazzling ultimate weapon. They take a screenshot of their character and decide to use it as their desktop background. That's not what they're doing. In this case, player A has followed the rules of the game and worked hard with their party to clear the ultimate raid, earning themselves a weapon and a title as evidence of their feat. Feat? When other players come across player A using their title and ultimate weapon, they see a legend who has legend, by the way, who has overcome one of the game's most punishing duties. On the other hand, should they encounter player B, they would simply see a character with their default gear. Let's imagine a scenario in which player A and B cross paths in game. On player B's screen, player A appears with their brand new title and ultimate weapon, the same weapon they appear themselves as having equipped. Conversely, on player A's screen, player A appears with the title and hard-won weapon, while player B appears in their default gear. In other words, player A sees the rewards each player has earned fairly within the context of the game rules, and player B sees a modified version of the game, but with these changes only visible to player B themselves, thus falls in the realm of individual enjoyment. Please note this is not intended as a judgment on the virtue of one approach versus the other. You may not be doing that, but it's going to happen in the discussion somewhere here online. Similarly, if a player chooses to install a mod, the risk of encountering a computer virus, for example, is borne by the individual. Weird segue. Additionally, mods that do not adversely affect other players and which visual changes are only visible to the... We can all see where this is going, right? Only visible to the individual user can be said to narrowly maintain the integrity of the game's design, although, of course, this is open to interpretation. However, if a mod was updated and its changes became visible not just to the individual mod user, but to other players too, what would the implications be? Player A, with their title and gear earned from hours of concerted effort with their friends, and Player B, with their mod-derived gear, are now on a level playing field. This development may not concern Player B, but for Player A, it considerably negates the cooperation, time, and effort invested, not to mention the pride they might have felt in their achievement. I honestly already don't really think that Ultimate Weapons have that level of notoriety. Sales have been a thing for a very long time, and that's largely negated that sense. For me, I think for most Ultimate players I know, it's when you get the kill really early, it feels that way. But generally speaking, the time spent in knowing that you beat it has always been more the reward for Ultimate. Like, those of us challenging it, a lot of us, especially early on, we more so want the effective content hours and time and co-op. We want those things out of the MMO that we're playing. So I already don't agree with that statement, just as an Ultimate Raider. I just don't. I feel like I put my Legend title on for 1 second to get the screenshot, and then I take it off and don't use it. And the weapons, it depends on how they look, because some other weapons that aren't Ultimate Weapons, I think, actually look great in game. After all, the rewards are now available to anyone with the mod installed, albeit lacking the corresponding in-game attributes. In this example, other players have been infringed upon, and the intended design of the game has been negatively impacted. Although Player B may have been unaware of the mod's precise functionality, their usage has diminished other players' motivation and circumvented the game's systems. Even if the creator of the mod simply intended for players to readily access and enjoy their favorite gear, they have detrimentally affected both the game and the wider player community. In response, our only options would be to ask that player to cease using the mod, or to request that the mod creator removes the functionality causing the problem. Of course, we could also implement preventative measures in-game, but this would divert programming resources from other areas, potentially damaging the enjoyment of other players in the long run. Okay, that makes sense. The scenario outlined above is just one example, but I hope it helps clarify the differences between mod usage within the realm of individual enjoyment and mod usage which is damaging to the game itself. Some players might ask, well, what about a mod which only makes changes visible to other users of the same mod? The issue is that any mod which makes changes visible to others requires the manipulation or rewriting of game files, which is fundamentally even more problematic and destructive, which is really where their terms of service and, of course, Japan's the unauthorized modification of game files is illegal in Japan, specifically unauthorized, and with Final Fantasy XIV it is unauthorized. Even with supposing that this theoretical mod provided generous improvements to the game and was well received by all players, the moment a problematic feature is introduced to said mod, we must insist the players stop using it. Another example of such a feature, a mod that allows players to free... See, I actually thought this was more so what they were going to go. They kind of mentioned it earlier, but to me this was probably the bigger deal. Players to freely equip optional items and display them to others. What does that say to the players who go through the trouble of saving up to purchase these goods from the online store? You are going to get no sympathy on this statement, Yoshi-P. I mean, for me, I totally get it. But I also don't buy anything off the MOG station. Like, the only time I do is when I'm doing giveaways to other people. So it's like, I already know. They're like, oh no, we have $42 for 2 different pieces of an outfit. There's a whole story behind why that's priced that way, but it's still not a good thing, you know what I mean? Oh no, $30 for a mount. What about those people who spent the money? Nobody's going to show any sympathy for this statement. Like, it makes sense logically, but you already know that that's the response to that statement is not going to be a good one. Are these players losing out by not using a mod? Some may say that Square Enix is to blame for trying to make money by demanding players spend extra on optional items. We operate our servers and data centers 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, with the hope that our players can enjoy a reliable gaming experience. Currently, global inflation is taking its toll at a rapid pace, driving up server electricity costs, the cost of land, and even the price of servers themselves. We do not want to increase the subscription fee for players, if at all possible, but keeping our game running requires sufficient income. If we start creating a deficit, 14 may no longer be able to operate. This is an example of a damage dealt to the service. I think this is kind of an extreme example. It's totally a viable one in a sense, but it calls for a lot of, like, you could just say, like, you know, we offer a service and we can't allow people to just download that service for free while we're charging for it. Like, that statement would have been simple enough. This is basically like taking it to the furthest extreme of, like, if it became so normal that effectively all of these things happened. Let me rephrase. We were told when the Cash Shop was initially announced at the very first fan festival, by the way, that the funds from the online store do exclusively go to Final Fantasy XIV. I sincerely doubt that's still the case. But we were told that very specifically those funds strictly go to Final Fantasy XIV, whereas their overall, from like the subscription fees, that goes into the general. That just the way corporations work, and that they like look at the overall surplus and then divert funds and all that stuff. I bet that's what happens with all of Final Fantasy XIV's income now. I sincerely doubt the online store strictly is used for Final Fantasy XIV. That is just what we were told over a decade ago at this point. But it's still like, again, you're not gonna like people. There's a difference between getting it right and being like, that's my problem. That's not my problem. Like I don't know. I can see what the online responses are to this entire section, like in my head already. But it still, you got to admit, it makes sense. If they charge money for something and then you can just download it for free, through third-party means. I mean, you understand why they would shut that down, right? Like, I'm not crazy in that regard. In these cases as well, we ask that players refrain from using such mods or remove the offending function from the mod itself. Personally, I understand that modding culture is rooted in good intentions, but we are given no choice but to act if the mods even incidentally threaten player motivation or the viability of our services. Let's consider another theoretical mod, one that displays your... Keep saying theoretical, we know he knows they're real, right? If this presentation is displayed only on the user screen, that might fall into the category of personal use and responsibility. Bear in mind that this is my personal interpretation and not a discussion of whether or not that behavior is right or wrong. However, if the user posts a screenshot of their naked character publicly on social media, 14 itself may be subject to legal measures by regulators in certain countries. Yeah, they've made this statement before. Laws that regulate the content of video games grow stricter by the year. These laws are there to protect minors and for a variety of other reasons, but the fact remains that they are tangibly becoming stricter. We have a duty to provide our services in adherence to the laws of all countries where 14 is available. If we are unable to do so, the distribution of our game can be prohibited. This is another example of damage dealt to our services. Allow me to repeat myself when I say I do not intend these examples to be a censure of mod users or creators. I only wish to provide some tangible examples of how using certain mods can damage other players, 14, and the services we provide, regardless of the mod's original intent. Well, the mod's original intent was clearly to goon, so I sincerely doubt they had any of that in mind. But yeah, I understand to some capacity. As always, we will do our utmost to keep creating a world which all players can enjoy. Even though it takes some time to do so, it is my hope to incorporate player feedback and officially fulfill as many functionality requests as possible. I'm also considering how to increase the freedom of choice players have in the gear they choose to equip. So, I mean, that last statement usually just reads as them continuing to remove the gender blocks on a lot of stuff. But another request has been removing the job blocks on a lot of pieces of equipment. So it may be leading in that direction as well. The thing is that I've had to learn a lot about this in the recent times with everything that's been going on. And I don't think there would ever be a situation where they could increase freedom of choice that players have enough to eliminate people's desire to use these things. I think that the character creator being updated is a must. I wouldn't use it, but I think that I've seen the outcry for it for years and years. There's been some hope of that happening in the near future, largely because we've seen them making adjustments to pieces that are already on it for the graphical update. So the hope is that that will allow them to make additions to it now in the future, since they've had to kind of redo and they've just had to revisit it a lot. But I think that you can do this. I'm not saying not to do this, but you really need to take a look at the core character creator itself and make people feel like they have characters that they are more attached to, that are more individual, and that would help tremendously. Now, still wouldn't undo this. I still think that a lot of people want to grab like various third-party assets and use them. I hear that there's tons of just stuff that's straight up ripped from other games and just, literally copy-pasted over onto functionalities like this. And there are people who like make all sorts of other visual things that I just don't see that ever happening in Final Fantasy XIV to the capacity at which it's gotten to behind the scenes. And it's not even behind the scenes anymore. It's very much in front of the scenes. It's just behind their scenes, let's be honest. So yeah, yes, they should be doing these things, though. They should be totally incorporating as much player feedback, functionality requests, freedom of choice for players, and like I said, the character, all those things, absolutely. Do it. Don't let my pessimism in regards to how much it would affect mod usage, don't let it affect it. Do it, please. While paying respect to long-standing tradition of modding PC gamers, I ask that players in turn respect our game by enjoying their fun within the confines of some basic rules. They really are. With that business aside, I was very pleased to announce the next fan festival yesterday on the 12th anniversary of Final Fantasy XIV. This wouldn't have been possible without you, our players. Thank you all so much for your support thus far, and we hope to have the pleasure of your company as we continue along this incredible journey for years to come. And one more thing, for those wondering what comes after Japan Fan Fest, while I can't give you any details just yet, rest assured you won't have to wait long. So, I did, like I said, record a video that goes over when the potential dates are for 8.0, and I will release that video probably not too long after this one. Maybe like 2 hours after this one. And yeah, I've gone through the calculations, and my initial Doomer post where I was like, man, if they follow pattern, it wouldn't be until like May. It's totally off. I shouldn't have done that at 6:30 in the morning. Probably shouldn't be doing this video at 6:30 in the morning either. But I have a video that better exemplifies past FanFests and past patch cycles to give us a more accurate thing, which, yeah, you probably won't have to wait long till after JP FanFest for 8.0. So that's good news at the very least. Looks like just later FanFests in general, closer to the earlier days actually of how FanFest used to go, which is good news. But anyway, that's gonna be a wrap for this video. Well, I guess hold on. My overall thoughts on this is that this is gonna get just dragged through the mud. Like, people who are already largely like against mod usage are gonna use this as, of course, hey, look, guys, he does this. And people who are for it are largely going to be like, okay, but fix your game. You know, like, it's one of those things where you shouldn't let things like that affect whether or not you post this. Like, unfortunately, I've just seen all sides of it for so long. I totally understand this. I feel like a lot of people probably totally understand this. It makes sense. It's logical. It's got very clear examples of why recent things have been happening and warnings about things that could come if people are not careful. But it's not going to, like, no one who is like super hardcore about all this stuff is gonna see this and be like, oh, you know what, you're right, I'm gonna turn over a new leaf. You know, like, I guess, I don't know, maybe I'm just pessimistic in that regard. I just don't see that happening. But I'm always of the opinion, if it doesn't affect me, I don't really care. I'd say I don't have any stakes in this game. I don't use mods. I don't really like mods. But when I log in, I don't know who's doing what. Honestly, the most annoying mods to me are the raid mods. And this is going to blow your mind. The Fall Guys mod. When people had like a mod that was like showing them the fastest route. And then I think that at some point it even auto ran through the course for them too. That was horrible. It just made me not want to do it. I was like, what am I gonna make like the 24-player group and just be like, all right, guys, let's just take turns winning at this point. Come on, let's just have fun. I don't know. It killed a lot of my motivation, which was an otherwise fun event. So those are the things I care about most. But the visual mods, I don't care. Personally, I don't care if you have an ultimate weapon mod. I don't get it because I prefer to do the content. But like, I got the experience of fighting it, and I really enjoyed that experience. You know what I mean? And it's like, my weapon, yeah, some of the weapons I like I use the monk weapons and stuff, like the Omega monk weapons, but I'm not like, you know, A, I don't know the other person has it if they do have it, like you said in this example, and B, it's not like I look at this and be like, I earned this, these are mine, scrubs. That doesn't matter to me. I just, like I said, I have no stake in the game. So if you are doing it and you're doing it in a way that doesn't get you banned, quite frankly, I just don't care. Keep doing you. I'm not gonna tell you you should or shouldn't do it. Just know that when you go around yelling about it in the Costa del Sol, this is what happens. Don't do that next time. But anyway, that's going to be a wrap for this video. Again, I'll post a link to this in the description so you can read it for yourself, interpret it for yourself, and yeah, have a fun time in the comment section. I'm sure it's going to be great. But anyway, thanks for watching. See you on the next one. And until then, take care.